Welcome to the National Minority Supplier Development Council's Equity in Business podcast. My name is John Daniel, and I'm humbled to be your host. But I am thrilled to be here with an entrepreneur personified. Some of you might know him from acting, and he's still doing it. We know he's awesome there, but there's a new side to this gentleman. It started many, many years ago. Mr. Malik Yoba is on site here at the National Minority Supplier Development Council's Conference and Exchange. Thank you, sir, for taking some time with us.
Thank you.
You know, we're proud of you, man. So
I'm proud of you too, man. I like what you're doing.
I'm going to get right
I've listened to this podcast when
Thank you, sir.
was doing my research on the organization a few months
Now,
back.
I didn't pay him for that now.
No, true story.
Brother, I'm going to get right into it.
Yeah.
One of the most important things that we share on this podcast is backstory. Who people are, how they became who they are is just as important. Take your time, share a little bit about who you have, where you've come from, the hurdles you overcome, and how that is relevant and meaningful to who you are today.
Thank you for the setup. So, born in the South Bronx, raised in Harlem. I always like to say I was born in the rubble because that's what was outside my door.
Come on.
Outside my window, right? Empty lots, burnt out buildings. Growing up in the South Bronx, same thing in Spanish Harlem. We moved there in the 70s. And, you know, at the time, we didn't understand redlining. I didn't understand that that was on purpose, that the federal government literally drew lines in communities and says no investment goes here, no mortgages, no insurance, which drives real estate taxes, which drives education opportunities. We didn't know that. You just think you're from the hood. And a lot of us wear that as a badge of honor. I never did because I always aspired for more because of the parents that we had. So growing up in a household, early years was before we moved into ownership. So it wasn't until I was in second grade that my father bought his first co-op. And he was very, very proud of that. That was in Harlem in a development called 1199 Plaza, which was developed by his hospital union. So he was a union delegate, and he had the inside track, right? In fact, we were the first people to move into the building. Before they even finished the final paint job, he gave us a tour of the unit we were going to move into, and we all wrote our name on the wall, and then they painted over it before we moved in. Fun fact, Dame Dash grew up in my building.
Come on.
Jim Jones, the rapper, lived in the building next door. So growing up in Harlem, man, and being around people that didn't have a lot, but being exposed to the world through my parents, either through travel at an early age, traveling to the Caribbean as kids, traveling to Canada, taking road trips to DC, and a huge library in the crib. Right, so there was no TV. My father refused to put a TV in the house.
Wow.
He called it the idiot box, or the boob tube. You probably remember that.
Yes, indeed.
The old heads called it the boob tube. But there were a lot of books. So whether it was Roots or, you know, the autobiography of Malcolm X or Siddhartha or the Black Book or a book on Nat Turner or any number of, you know, biographies or ISIS papers was in the crib, but there was also National Geographic, so we had a subscription to that. And I was that type of kid who would flip through the pages. I would not just flip through them. I would devour the pages of National Geographic and dream about traveling around the world. In fact, they used to come with the maps of the world.
Yes.
And I would take the map out, close my eyes, and go point, look, and be like, okay, that's where my wife's going to come from. Like, I didn't think she was necessarily going to come from the Bronx. So the woman I married did come from Philly. Where you from?
Come on now. What part of Philly?
She's from West Philly,
Okay.
Mount Airy.
All right.
So we're no longer married, but I did marry a woman from Philly.
Let me reflect on what you said about Harlem, because it was a bit of a renaissance for you in many respects. I don't know. My mentor is Tony Brown from Tony Brown's Journal.
Yes, sir.
He had a condominium in Harlem for many, many years. Dr. Benji Kana, a well-known academician, used to take students to Egypt to understand their roots. They all were in Harlem. So you had an ecosystem within your house, but there was still one around at that time. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I salute you, bro.
Yeah, that was my father. My father was a Pan-Africanist. He was definitely like, when you graduate high school, you're moving back to Africa. So he was on that. And there was also a lot of books on design, magazines. So my mother loved interior design. So there was Architectural Digest was always in the crib, House Beautiful, all that, fashion magazines. And so although there was no TV, there was some form of media and there was a lot of books. And so I would literally think about one, being a billionaire so that I could fix what I saw in my neighborhood. And I love design and I loved architecture. I love these things. And so, and I've always just loved having a hustle, right? So whether it was a paper route, at one point I was a bicycle messenger. I sold ices on the street. I used to make leather bags and sell them. I was all, I mean,
You were entrepreneurial.
Here's a crazy story though. There's a lot of things like before ESPN came up with the X Games.
Yes, sir.
I had that concept as a kid because I used to race BMX. I said, wouldn't it be dope if there's a show that takes skateboarding and BMX and motorcycle and they put it all in one? Those delivery guys, like the Uber guys,
Yes.
You see those square backpacks they had?
Right.
I was making bags at 17 years old. And I said, when we go to the beach, nobody ever wants to carry the cooler. I want to make a knapsack where I could put foam in it, some insulation, put it on your back, and you could carry it on your back. Now, I didn't start seeing those things until COVID, right? When the delivery game really took off. So I've always been thinking about things, right? I was 19 years old when I said I was going to have a restaurant. By 29, I had my first restaurant. I had a record company at one point.
Was that in New York?
That was Soul Cafe.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was a restaurant I did in partnership. In fact, when I finished doing the movie Cool Runnings, I had this idea to open something I was going to call the Hip Hop Cafe. And at the time, you know, you had Hard Rock Cafe, you had Planet Hollywood, you had Fashion Cafe. And I wanted to do something that was celebrating our music and our culture and our food. And Stern School of Business at NYU had a program where they would consult women and, as they said, minorities, which I never use that word for myself, but they would help you with your business plan. So I was working with these cats on my business plan, and they told me about another brother named Michael Van, who was one of the owners of the Shark Bar in New York. He said, he's trying to do something similar to you. Why don't you guys collaborate? So we did that for 9 years. And so there's been a theater company I had, the Malik Yoba National Theater Company. There's been a marketing company I've had. So I've always been doing something aside from, I mean, even when I worked at the City Kids Foundation, I talked about that in my fireside chat. I was a vice president at 23 years old. And my boss used to say to me, I will follow you to the ends of the earth. Because if I had an idea, so for instance, in 1991, there was an incident in the city where there were 2 black kids on their way to school who were attacked by 4 white kids. And they got painted with white shoe polish.
Yes, sir.
And that set off 3 weeks of racial violence in the city. I wrote a song called Heal the Rainbow. That song became a music video. It became a book. It became a TV special. It became a year of programming for the youth organization. Same thing happened when Rodney King got attacked. Put a song together called What You Gonna Do About Hate? And it was me, Donald Faison, who was a rapper at the time. He was all part of the youth program. 2 other people, a cat named Hassan Aljendi, and another young kid named Kevin Jordan. And we did this song that then became a book, became programming. So my background is in community. My background's in education. It's been in media, even way before I was doing film or television. And because of a woman named Lori Meadoff, who was the founder of City Kids Foundation, and saw something in me when I was a 19-year-old and said, hey, kid, I like the way you think. I want to hire you to do this work with us. That's where I learned how to use art, use communication to engage young people, to have a point of view, to make impact.
Excellent.
And so
let me offer a couple of reflections on what you said. What I heard you say is you had, number one, circles of support in your home.
Yes, sir.
Reading was fundamental.
1000%.
The boob tube was not going to happen. And something tells me there was a certain sense of practice within. Some people call that discipline. But at the end of the day, that was there. What I've also heard you say is you had additional circles of support outside of the home that encouraged you becoming your best.
Yes, sir.
I want to take that, knowing we have limited amount of time, but at the same time, I want to be able to uncover it and reveal it. How does all that relate to what you're doing now in real estate? And I'm going to back up so that you are able to think about it beforehand. How does that relate to the National Minority Supplier Development Council? Because we know this is a healthy ecosystem to scale all that multifacetedness of your entrepreneurship.
Yeah, no, those are two great questions, man. So what I love about where I am now, so I started Yoba Development in 2017. Didn't really do much with it until 2018, as I shared from the stage. I was doing a show called God Friended Me, where I was playing a real estate developer, and I was on set one day across the street from a entire city block. A friend of mine was developing. He and I sat on a board of a place called the Center for Social Innovation. He's one of the most successful developers in New York. His name is Scott Reckler of RXR. And I never talked to him about real estate, even though we sat on the board for 6 years. But I knew at one point I would. And so while filming the show, I'm looking at his development. I'm thinking about how many people from the housing projects down the block walk by film sets and construction sites and have no idea about either space. I'm in both of these worlds. I want to figure out a way to bring my passion for working with young people, filmmaking and real estate together.
Wow.
I shared that vision with a woman. It was a group of women, actually, who wanted to do a foundation with a celebrity. I said, no. I started Yoba Development, but I didn't do anything with it yet. I want my company to focus on this work. And 2 days later, a woman named Leslie Ann Dunn, who was part of that group, she's now my chief of staff, she sent me a deck that said, I build New York. And so she took my idea, the thought, and turned it into a thing. So that was the first manifestation, or the second, right? First was me speaking it,
Right.
from thinking it.
Come
Second
on.
was her.
Think and grow rich.
That's right. That's right. And so I took that deck to Scott, and he said, we're thinking about the same thing. How do we bring more diversity into the real estate development space? He said, I'll fund it. And when he said that, I said, you know what? I want to do a documentary that follows me on my journey. And I took 7 young people of color on the journey with me. That then became something called the Real Estate Mixtape, which then became the basis of a curriculum for high school students. Once I started sharing that content in community, which it was always made for, it was never made to screen on television. It was never made to stream on a streamer, because working in the media business, I'm not going to let some executive tell me the value of what I have to offer, which they'll try to do. Well, we don't have enough eyeballs. What I understand about the content, if it changes one life, that's significant. And this process has changed many lives. There's a young man named Vaughn Thorpe who was 25 years old when he went on a journey. Vaughn was still on the block in Harlem. His brother's doing 34 years in the feds. They were hustling. But Vaughn had that look in his eye. He had that hunger. All that kid needed was opportunity. Vaughn got off the block, left Harlem, moved to LA. He got his real estate license, cut his hair. I bought him his first suit just earlier this year. Got him in touch with one of the biggest the most successful realtor brokerage in California, Supplier Realty, run by a brother named Munir Ali, who's taken Vaughn under his wing. And Vaughn is now out in California selling real estate. One of the young ladies that was with us is now at the Obama Foundation. One of the young people is now at Pratt. We're getting kids scholarships. We're getting them paid internships from the school-based programs. We've got partnership with Pratt, with FAMU, with Johannesburg School of Architecture. So this work around education, using storytelling to drive opportunity to expose these worlds to people, leads to me participating and having partnerships in other real estate deals, shooting content for other companies, like Mochify is one of them. I don't know if you're familiar with them, it's Stanford Mobility Capital Finance. We're doing all the content for their app. That's all about financial literacy, pathways to wealth building, specifically in real estate. It's led to me being introduced to this organization and being invited to speak here, right? Nicole Hambrick specifically heard me speak at an event for the U.S. Exim Bank.
Nicole.
Nicole.
Yes.
Nicole's the plug.
Yeah.
Introduced me to Lisa and then Ying. And so when I thought of this organization and the 17,000 members, there's a lot of stories to tell. You're doing some of that work. You're doing it because you realize the backstory of how you became who you are. And there's lots of ways we can continue to tell these kind of stories so that the small businesses can scale, the larges, the primes can learn how to be more effective in those kind of partnerships. I think, this work. So you asked about like how did it lead here? It's really obedience. It's obedience.
No. Unpack that a little bit more.
Well, to be on set shooting a TV show in 2018, and we're now in 2024, I could have never conceived that I would be here today doing this interview with you, right? Why am I here? Because I've been obedient to what I heard, which was, that's it.
Come on. Give me a pound, bro.
Come on, man.
Come on. That's awesome.
And so it's all brought me right back to my roots, right? I could be on set doing a TV show or film right now, but I would not be telling my own story. I would not be building my company. I'd be telling somebody else's story. I'd be activating a small portion of what my potential is.
As we come to a close, respecting your time, and I love the fact that you're so multifaceted, is there anything that we haven't covered that you think you'd like to really voice?
Well, I intend to continue to work with this organization. I intend to continue to build relationships with the members. We didn't talk about our federal contracting company, Yoba Global Solutions,
Come on.
which came as a result of this work. So I'm down screening my real estate doc at a NARAB conference. And I just got a text from the president of NARAB, Courtney Johnson Rose, who said, I hear you out there giving me shout outs. And I'm on her brain trust, right, to help her think through her vision and how she can execute the vision as she takes NARAB, which is National Association of Real Estate Brokers, to the next level. And so I was at a NARAB conference screening my real estate doc at Miles College in Birmingham, Alabama. And there was a woman named Paula Watts who teaches folks about government contracting. I think I mentioned her, government contractors, our procurement innovators, GPI, her company, GPI Win. And I learned about the 8A program. And next thing I know, we're taking her class and we started a federal contracting company, which, it all converges. And here's the key. With all the stuff that I'm doing, obviously it can only happen through partnerships. And so I really believe that being on this path of obedience, which is about service above self, making sure that there's a knowledge transfer that can be accelerated through storytelling.
Yes, sir.
Through creating moments in time where people can gather and learn and grow together. It's changed my life, bro.
Servant leadership, brother.
Yeah.
I mean, I see exactly what you're doing, and I hope we can bring you back for another podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
And,
we'll make it happen.
I think the National Minority Supply Development Council, and I'm going to close on this, is a healthy ecosystem that allows people to build relationships and achieve their goals. So
I see
look
that.
forward.
And I've heard that from stories I've been hearing from some of the folks here. So
I appreciate it.